Hey there friends, what's up? Kevin here from the MSOTD Rocks YouTube channel, and today I'm going to be watching The Great Escape with Steve McQueen. Nah, just kidding. I'm reviewing Chemical Warfare by Escape the Fate. Before we get started though, please follow MSOTD Rocks on places like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We do 30-second song a day features on those platforms to get you to know with more music that's happening now and then. We also do other things on those platforms like ask you questions, connect with you to really get to understand music. On Instagram, we do have an IGTV series which comes out every single Tuesday night, which is behind the scenes look at what's happening here. And every single Wednesday night, we go live on Instagram. It's a great way to get in the know of just kind of who's around the scene and just have some fun with us because we answer all sorts of different questions live for you. Please also subscribe to this YouTube channel because not only do you get the album reviews, you also get videos such as the Kevin Figures Out series where I try to figure out if I like certain bands or not in the scene that I really don't know that much about. Different top 10 lists, different lists about emerging bands in the scene today, and of course, the year-end awards. You can check out what we thought were the best of the overall years in 2020, 2019, and 2018 up to this point. And this is also the Chord Progression podcast. It is our very own podcast. We're interviewing all these great upcoming emerging bands in the scene today and some of the heavy hitters in ways where you're just getting to know them like you're sitting in a room with them, just hanging out like friends and just talking and shooting the shit. It's a great way to go about it. We've had bands like Arena, Outlier, Varsity is coming up as well, Worth the Wait, Divide the Fall, Formash Sanu's been on the show, Rosie, Kingdom Collapse, and so many more. So you can watch those podcasts right here on our YouTube channel, or you can stream them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeart Radio. Link description below for things, so like, share, subscribe. Let's say tell your dog, because I think it's funny. Let's go. So a little bit of a background on Escape the Fate. Their I Am Human record came out back in 2018, and I listened to it and I'm like, you know what, it's okay. I think Broken Heart definitely still is the top song from that album. It still hits home today for me. And when I was looking at the reviews of it, I mean, nothing was really damning about the album as well. It kind of felt rather consistent. But for Escape the Fate, that album really didn't hit the commercial success like This War Is Our did, or the original Dying in Latest Fashion, which had Ronnie Radke on it, did. So since I Am Human and working on Chemical Warfare, what has happened for the band? Well, the band ended up going on tour before the pandemic hit with The Word Alive and Falling in Reverse on the Drug and Me Is Gold tour. I ended up being at that show at the Sylvie in Madison, and was it fun? Yes it was, and I do want to see Escape the Fate again. This is where Blue Ridge Rock Festival comes in. Since the pandemic hit, the band has been rather consistent with streaming online, especially on Twitch from both Craig and Robert Ortiz, to really kind of just connect with the fans in that way. They've played a lot of games together with other members of different bands, such as Telly Smith from The War Alive, Danny Warsnap from Asking Alexandria, and of course Falling in Reverse's Ronnie Radke. And unfortunately, back in February of 2021, the band's practice space was broken into and robbed. So hopefully this album gets more people listening because then they can get back on their feet in that instance and then go back to playing kick-ass music. But let's go to the album, shall we? So starting out with the concept, construction, and instrumentation on Chemical Warfare, I'm just going to take a look at using the albums that Craig has had. So I'm just removing Dying's Latest Fashion because taking a look at the Craig music versus the Ronnie music, of course, Ronnie's Dying's Latest Fashion, probably Escape the Fate's most popular album, but it's on its own because this is Craig's thing now. We're focusing on this. Since Craig's been in the band is in more of this like hard rock, post-hardcore, pop punk, with also kind of these other more modern, some electronic influences shaped in there as well to really create this more dynamic and unique sound. And when it came to Chemical Warfare, this was no exception, but it also made me a little bit nervous because when it comes to more of the modern influences, I'm not the biggest fan of those, especially with the electronics smoothing over a thing. So when this album came out, I'm like, I kind of am hoping for more of that This War Is Ours kind of style of Escape the Fate for this one. But we definitely got a dynamic mix here, and I'll tell you why. So with that dynamic mix, we had certain songs that had more of that harder instrumental bass with some electronic stuff more as a background, more of a complement. Sometimes where they were right in the middle and equal, and sometimes the electronics definitely overtook the instrumentals. And taking a look at the first part of that, where the instrumentals took over the electronics just had a little more of a backing beat in there, or more of a complement style. Those were my favorite songs in the whole entire record because they had this more upbeat, they had this more just fluid kind of style, but they saw the rawer and heaviness kind of the instrumentation with the drums, the guitars, the bass that really connect with me on these sort of songs, really brought the message out to the forefront, where the electronic part of it really complemented this well to let those heavy parts and those light parts and just the energy really flow through it, kind of just adding to it overall. So take a look, couple examples. Let's start out with Lightning Strike, where Lightning Strike definitely had more of this upbeat, up-tempo kind of style that was rather fun, and the electronic piece of it really kind of added to that energy. But it was Rob Ortiz's drum fills on this that just kept the energy, the amped upness, and more of this raw, more kind of heavy feel to it, which really did work out well. Chemical Warfare, on the other hand, it did have more of this more melodic hard rock track kind of sound, but the verse had a softer piano over it to really kind of give it this more deeper, more impactful, emotional vibe to it. Then when the chorus came in, it was much more melodic hard rock, kind of like an alter bridge theme would be. My God, this worked out perfectly with the theme, which I will end up getting to in the third section of this video. Also, take a look at Demons, because the heavier instrumentation on this one gave us this heavier feeling of like an Escape the Fate song, which I was a big fan of. But the electronic cranking on this kind of subtly kept in the roughness of the song. Plus, it leads to this building bridge and this heavy breakdown, which I'm just like, yes. Now at times where they had a healthy mix between the electronic influences, the modern influences, and that more raw, heavier instrumentation, I was a little bit half and half on this. It all depended upon it, because there were times where that flow just really worked out well just to create this more dynamic track, but there were times where I just thought it was a little bit chunky, a little bit clunky, and just a little bit more broken up. Take a look at Invincible, for instance, because the harder intro on this one contrasts very well against the more electronic overlayer, but the verses just kind of have this weak flow of it where it just doesn't feel like the song is fully there. Also, take a look at Ash's Broken World, and this one I really do like because it used the electronic verses with some drumming behind it to really link the more hard rock anthemic intro with this super duper powerful chorus that it ends up having. And with some of those slight electronic parts over it, it just adds this chant feel on the chorus of the song. I'm like, whoa, this is good stuff. Now when they use more of this electronic sound and use the instrumentals as more of this accent to the backing, I necessarily wasn't the biggest fan of this, and the biggest reason was because when I go through these songs, the energy transfer from one section to the other I thought was rather choppy, rather clunky, and it just really didn't sit well with me in terms of just enjoying the song solely because it felt like I was being forced from one spot to the other instead of having to flow naturally throughout. Looking at Not My Problem as the first example, especially in the chorus, they do have some of this more electronic backing in there, and it does go against the drums. The drum with the fills, especially from Robert Ortiz really filling out this whole entire thing, is a thing I really do like, but that electronic feel kind of just waters over and just kind of waters down this whole entire thing in terms of the overall energy that's behind it, and I think it just kind of ruins the energy flow that was being built up into this track. Going into Unbreakable, this is another one I wasn't the biggest fan of because looking at the chorus specifically, it did have more of this Skillet legendary kind of inspiration with that huge driving anthemic sound, which I do understand, but the way the electronics were put over it, it just kind of smooths it out in a way, and it just makes it sound a little more pretentious, a little bit more uppity at points. Wasn't the biggest fan of it because I thought if I'm kind of like walking to the gym, I could easily hear this being played like a spin cycle class, and the kind of music they play there doesn't really resonate well with me, so I'm like, okay, maybe back off of this one. Erase You is the exception to the rule, but when I get to the themes and style section of this review, I'm gonna explain it there, build up a little suspense. So overall, when it comes to the composition, construction, instrumentation on Chemical Warfare, we got kind of what we expected with Escape the Fate, with that post-hardcore, hard rock, pop-punk sense, mixing with some modern influence, some electronic influences. But when they stuck with more of the instrumentation and had those electronic influences and modern influences really be more of a complement, I thought it worked out well to really pace these songs well, really create this great energy flow. Even though they were mixed healthy for the most part, I thought it worked out well as well. Create more of this dynamic feel, more modern, taking it a little bit lighter than what I would expect and what I would like, but still good overall. When they went heavier on the electronic influences and modern influences as well, not necessarily for me, but overall, I mean, when I really went through it, I was a little surprised that I was a little bit more happy with it than I was disappointed with it. Now going into the vocals from Craig Mabbitt, and when it comes to this album with Craig Mabbitt, I was going to take a look at this one under the lens of when I got to talk with Justin DeBleek, former guitarist of Ice Nine Kills, on the Chord Progression podcast. We were talking about different vocal styles, and he's always talking about when you're talking and singing about things that are very personal, you're trying to give through these powerful messages. Make sure your voice is believable. Make sure people are going to really buy into what you're saying and believe that what you're singing and the emotions there are true. And I kind of went to this one with Craig Mabbitt to see especially where the themes and styles are going to go, which we'll get to next. But when I looked into this, I thought this might be Craig's best effort ever on something like this, because when I went through all those songs, whether it was something that was, again, heavier with the instrumentals with those electronic backings, whether it was something with the half and half or more electronic, whether it was something that was slower, faster, whatever, Craig's vocals really made me believe in the messages that were being put out here. They were very powerful, they were very anthemic, they were very raw, they were very also kind of, at times, a little bit smoothed over, but they really fit the overall emotion of the songs. Starting with Lightning Strike is my first example, because Craig uses this faster style that has a little bit of this electronic distortion to make the vocals really match up well with the verses and how fast it's going. But then as we go through, we get to the chorus, it's more natural, it's more of a neutral register for him, and it just becomes this more concentrated sound. And with how anthemic, how powerful this song is, the energy behind it, it just works out well. Like, I'm really believing, like, I'm going to be able to take on anything, you know, I'm at Lightning Strike, they're not going to be able to stop. Looking at Chemical Warfare, probably my favorite track in it, Craig used more of this like neutral register that he has on his vocals to fit in more with that melodic hard rock, kind of alter bridge feeling sound in a way. But what helps him here is closing each half of the chorus with that slightly more emotional energy, a little bit higher pitch, because it really shows the believability of the struggles that he's had with substance abuse in the past. It is incredibly powerful to hear something like this, and the whole bridge is where Craig absolutely shines on this, in my opinion. He starts with this more aggressive tone fitting to the song that really shows the addiction kind of trying to overtake your emotions, and it's really felt with the repetitive emotions and sounds that are really coming through on that bridge. But then when he begins to let it out, when the piano comes in to show us the pain with the higher pitch, louder sound, and more vocal heavy performance, again, this might be not only Craig's best vocal performance on this whole entire album, but this song for me specifically, I loved it. Take a look at Erase You as well, because Craig's changing pace from the faster in the verse and more melodic the choruses, and just it makes it believable that when you're noticing certain things about substance abuse, like you're noticing what's happening, you're noticing the pain that's being put on your family and friends, and just kind of the realization that you can make that change and that you're powerful enough to do it, otherwise you're going to end up being lost. Just the way his vocals go from faster pace in the verses to slower in the pre-chorus to more melodic in the chorus as well, just the overall downshifting of it is incredible. I thought it was well done. However, there were times where I wasn't the biggest fan of Craig's vocals. However, when it came down to this part, it was because of a little bit of a subtle nuancing where maybe the volume mix was right, maybe the distortion I felt was a little bit off, maybe the electronic pieces kind of smoothed over his vocals to really just not give him the full-on power, but the believability of the message was still there. Take a look at Hand Grenade, because in the verse he works more at this rapid pace to keep the energy up, again with his more neutral tone. I like the move, but the volume is just a little bit off on the vocals to kind of have it drown back into the sound of the instrumentals and not have the full-on force of it. Again, this is something I saw with Evanescence's The Bitter Truth consistently, and I feel like live this could be easily remedied. Taking a look at Unbreakable in the chorus, Craig is more melodic with these more drawn-out tones overall, slightly higher pitch, but there's some distortion over it, and I'm really not the biggest fan because his vocals are just a little bit of an odd tone, but to be fair, they do work well with the electronic influences on the overall instrumentation on this, so it does mix in, it's just not necessarily for me. Again, overall, this is probably my favorite Craig performance to date in terms of a whole entire album and on the song Chemical Warfare as well. When it comes to the believability of the themes of this album put into his vocals, he hits it nearly every step of the way, and the only time I didn't necessarily was like a big fan of it were subtle little nuances. So when it comes to the overall scheme of things, when it came to Craig's vocals, after deep diving this thing, yep. Take a look at the themes and the styles on this record. Chemical Warfare really takes a look at the aspects in your life that are preventing you from being your best overall self, to yourself, to your family, to your friends, and to your loved ones. And this could be from outside sources or sources within yourself as well. The album tackles overcoming addiction and being able to maintain and thrive in relationships with family and friends on songs like Chemical Warfare and Erase You. It also takes a look at removing toxic people from your life that are not helping you achieve your goals and dreams and rather holding you back on songs like Burn the Bridges, Hand Grenade, and even more. There are also themes of empowering yourself in order to get past those things and really break through them and not let them keep you down on songs like Unbreakable, Invincible, and of course, Lightning Strike. That is where it really sits into play. But how do the styles play off of this? And there is one shining example of this. So the biggest shining example of how these themes play off of the styles is take a look at Chemical Warfare and Erase You, where you're looking at the substance abuse side of things and how it's preventing you from achieving greatness within your family, your friends, yourself, and overall. Because the songs, they tackle this motive and this message the exact same way. Head on, straightforward, with Craig's incredibly believable vocals. But Chemical Warfare is much more hard rock, melodic bass, kind of has a feeling like an alter bridge song with Escape the Fate really driving that kind of style. But Erase You is a lot more electronic, a lot more kind of hip-hop-ish in a way, but a lot more having like a blank feel to it. And when I listen to both songs, I like Chemical Warfare a lot. Horatio wasn't the biggest fan of. But when I really understood what was going on, this was accomplished in an incredible way because both songs attack it the same way, but the music is brought differently so that no matter what way you look at it, you're gonna feel the emotion behind the effects that substance abuse, can have on you. You're gonna feel that just powerful, sometimes holding you back, and just the feeling that you're letting down your loved ones and your family and your friends, and the ability to just realize that and then finally say no more. If you're a hard rocker like me, you like that harder, more visceral stuff like punk rock, hard rock, metalcore, I love Chemical Warfare every step of the way. Me, Horatio, again, I wasn't gonna connect with it nearly as much because of the more electronic based sound on it. But I could show that to so many other people and they would understand what Craig Mabb was talking about and what we were all feeling through that song the same way I felt with Chemical Warfare. Again, this is something that is just amazing how it was done. I don't know any other way to describe it except this is just musical genius at this point. All right, time for our overall rating on Chemical Warfare by Skip the Fate, and it is... I'm gonna give Chemical Warfare a 6.5 out of 10. So 6.5 out of 10. What I like about this album, again, it's the construction, the flow of these overall songs, well, because Escape the Fate taking more of that classic post-hardcore mixed with pop-punk, mixed with hard rock sound, using those modern influences in there. When they stuck with heavier instrumentation or mixed the electronic and modern influences with that instrumentation kind of on level, the way these songs flowed was just really well done. The energy transfer from one spot to the next was really well done. I felt like we were going for a ride on some of these things, especially with the meanings overall. It just felt fantastic. Take a look at songs like Lightning Strike, My Gravity, and Demons. This really stands out well here. One other thing I liked about the fact was that this album was rather dynamic in the way it went because, again, like I just said, we had tracks that had a more instrumental base that had electronic backing kind of over it and just kind of as an influencer to really drive the pace and the energy of the song and let the rawness of those instrumentals thrive. Songs like Demons and Burn the Bridges really help out here. There are also times where they mix those rather evenly to kind of keep this more upbeat, more flowy style, more energetic style to it, but also maintain a heavier side of the song as well to really give you this heavier, more impactful feeling that the emotions of the messages we're going to have on songs like Lightning Strike and Hand Grenade. Plus then sometimes they even dropped it way, way, way back and really had this like more electronic full-on bass to it and had the instrumentals be more of the backing side of it. There were times I liked this, there were times I didn't, but again, the fact this album stayed dynamic with songs like Erase You and Not My Problem really did stick out to me. Speaking of Erase You, I have to bring this up again, how Erase You and Chemical Warfare managed to hit the exact same goal in terms of describing the emotions behind substance abuse and the problems that come along with it, using two completely different musical styles, but also impactfully hit you the same way, is incredible because there's people that vibe with Erase You a lot more with its heavy electronic bass, or Chemical Warfare more with more heavy instrumental bass as well. For myself, I really like Chemical Warfare. The first time I heard Erase You, I didn't really care for it, but when I deep dove into it, I saw so many parallels between it where, of course, I'm going to end up going with Chemical Warfare more, but the respect for Erase You is insurmountable. One thing that I like about this album, though, were the singles. I'm going to remove Demons because I really like Demons, and Walk On because while I wasn't the biggest fan of Walk On as a song, as this more live thing, it definitely has this powerful sound to it because when I take a look at the singles, it just really kind of fell flat in terms of what the overall album was going to end up being. Invincible had this great flow for me, but the melodic chorus really weakened the overall message, and Lindsey Sterling, honestly, her vocals did not stand out to me. It could have been a powerful thing, but it just kind of really weakened the song overall, in my opinion. Unbreakable had more of this electronic polish over it, really made it seem like a less believable anthem than it could have been. And then Not My Problem will touch many people. Do not get me wrong in that the meme will really hit people, but how the electronic, more bass verses and how it floated the chorus as well, and then the bridge and the breakdown, man, it just was really choppy. The part I'm like, this might not be the best from Escape the Fate. Of course, this is why you listen to the whole entire album. Going back to the singles with Unbreakable and Not My Problem, again, when the band really focused in on that heavier electronic style and then put the instrumentals in there as more of like the backing, more of the influence, or more of the, accenting style, I necessarily wasn't the biggest fan of it because, again, taking a look at the song, it's just how those songs were broken up and how the whole energy flowed between one part to the next. I felt like it was rather choppy. It just didn't necessarily hit as well as when they mixed the electronic and modern influence with their harder, more hard rock, post-hardcore, pop-punk influences perfectly, or had the instrumentals be a lot more and have the electronic, more modern influences be more accenting at that point. One thing I'm going to bring up here though is Ashes, and the only thing I didn't like about this track was I went through and I'm like, this is a good track, but it was just missing this like special moment to really make it stand out. Why am I putting this dislikes though? So you see it and check it out, because you're going to see this track, it's probably not going to be that popular, but it's going to be one of the most underrated tracks of Escape the Fate's career. It's that good. But there's just no moment that just stands out that's going to make it just overtake anything else. And it's kind of a shame. That's why I'm putting the dislikes, so you can check it out. Alright, time for my final thought on Chemical Warfare. And going into this, I was a little nervous, especially after the singles. And after my first listen through, I was honestly thinking this was going to be like a 4, if that. But this is why I do the deep dive. That's why I go deep into it, because then I find out more things. I find out some more of the genius that's happening behind the scenes. I find out some more of those subtle nuances in there. Of course, like I said, when Escape the Fate went more that electronic influences as the accent to the instrumentals, I like that a lot more because it gave that raw heaviness to it, but also let the electronic pieces really just help guide the pace, guide the energy. When they were mixed together rather well, like hand in hand, the electronics really guided the flow overall, and the instrumentals really took hold on it. But when the electronic and more modern influences really had the more prominent style to it, it really did fall flat in my opinion. It really had these more chunked up styles. Erase You is the exception to the rule, because what it did with Chemical Warfare to deliver the same message directly with 2 completely different sounds is absolutely incredible and respectful. That is musical genius right there. The nod I will give to Craig Mabb on this one is this is probably his best vocal performance on an album of all time, in my opinion, because everything was so believable from a personal standpoint. It was incredible to listen to. So, is this album my favorite Escape the Fate album? Honestly, probably not. Do I think it was better than I Am Human? Yes. And in the end, honestly, this album is incredibly respectable. I think it's definitely worth a listen, so go check it out. That's your free day, guys. Thank you for watching and listening to this episode of the Embassy Rocks YouTube channel. My name's Kevin. Head flip it. Missed it. See ya!